The Flash was actually a good movie, contrary to popular belief, because it seemed as if everyone who watched it thought it was absolute trash. Or at least it seemed to be what the general population of the internet thought. I tried to avoid looking at people's opinions before watching any piece of art because I want to generate my own opinion. It's hard to walk into a movie looking for all the things wrong about it, because 9 times out of 10 you'll find something wrong with it. But it's hard to avoid on the internet because The Flash is one of the biggest household names in the superhero world. This movie was one of the most anticipated superhero movies of all time. Before that, there hasn't been a live action Flash movie in 31 years. And since the only live action adaptation we've gotten recently is the CW series version of The Flash, people really wanted to see a full length, high budgeted Flash movie. And it did have a high budget, but it was questionable at most times where it was spent. There are 3 types of people who didn't like it: comic book fans, storyline critics, and visual critics. When it comes to the comic book fans, their opinions don't really matter because they're so critical about things not being accurate to the source material. It's hard to appease a comic book fan, and the majority of people don't really read the comics, so their opinions don't hold weight.
Know your fucking place, trash!
And when it came to storyline critics, it's understandable why people did not like it. Some things in the story were irrelevant. There were some changes made that really didn't sit well with people, but my question is, was it really a bad story? Without coming at it from a bias, which is difficult, but can you say it was a horrible story? I don't think so. Some people didn't like it because it deviated from the original Flashpoint story. For those of you who don't know, the movie is based on the Flashpoint paradox, where Barry goes back in time and changes things only to realize that he destroys the world in the process. A lot of people were familiar with this story because of the animated movie Justice League Flashpoint Paradox, which is the perfect Flash movie in my opinion. I highly recommend watching it before you watch the actual live action Flash movie to get an idea of what the live action movie is based on. There were a lot of differences between the live action adaptation and the animated movie. In the animated movie, the main villain was the Reverse Flash, which we didn't get to see in the live action movie, unfortunately. There was only one Barry the entire movie, and instead of finding an older version of Batman like in the live action, he instead finds Thomas Wayne, who is Bruce's dad. He essentially is the Batman in that timeline because instead of him and his wife dying, young Bruce and his mother die. So he becomes this cooler version of Batman who uses guns. And instead of the characters finding Kara, they find Clark instead. And when it comes to the visuals, let's just address the elephant in the room. I agree that the CGI in the movie was literal dog water. Well, in most parts. The running is just too goofy not to make fun of. There are some movies where you can look past the CGI because you're too invested into the story, but this is hard to look at for more than 5 seconds and not reminisce about old PS3 games. But that was only the greater part of the first parts of the movie. It later on started to look more decent towards the end. But other than that, it was a good movie. It was a good Flash movie. It wasn't at all perfect, but it did a good job. It was funny, it was witty, it was exciting. The Flash being funny and quirky is one of the best parts about his character, and they brought it out very well. My 11-year-old self would have loved to see a movie like this. It is everything you would want in a Flash movie. It also showcased some of the Flash's other powers, which had me geeking and squealing in excitement. It even had some of the coolest Batman sequences we've ever seen in live action, which is an added bonus to this movie. I mean, look at this stuff, you can't hate it. I understand why some people might say younger Barry was annoying, but I think it perfectly contrasted how Barry has grown and matured as a person, and gave him time to reflect on himself as a character. Younger Barry was a good representation of how a young person would feel after getting all these powers. And young Barry becoming the villain in the movie was so well written into the film because it gave the movie more depth. This gave Barry the time to truly reflect on the consequences of his actions. And the movie towards the end was also so heartfelt and deep. The sequence where Barry sees his mom for the last time and gave her a hug almost brought me to tears. The Flash was a good movie. If you're able to look past all the flaws and just invest yourself into the characters and the story, you'll really like it.